What a great way to start the new year off. I have to remember to call this thing up, but anyway. My name is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I want to share with you some memories that I have which go back close to 50 years. I was a part of a flock of seagulls, and I was somewhat of a renegade because when the early morning would come and the fishing boats would be churning offshore, all the flock would call to one another and they would fly out 1,000 strong. And as they flew out, what would happen, of course, is what they had to do was eat. And there were some rules. You didn't fly high or you would miss the food. Well, I was different because where I was while the flock was feeding in a frenzy was I was off out deep at the sea, and I was learning to fly. I was different than other seagulls. I wanted to fly. I wanted to figure out what's the limits? What can I do in this idea of flight? And so while they were feeding, I would be going out. And I remember the first day I went out, my goal was to fly as high as 100 feet. And so I'd go up slowly to that 100 feet. And then I would take my peak and I would dive down in the water. And as I dived down in the water, what I found was at about 50 feet, my wings would get in the way. And then I would go crashing into the water. There's a law about seagulls. Seagulls do not crash. Seagulls do not come apart at the seams, if you would, and let their feathers get in the way. And so I continued to work on this. And within about, 30 days, 45 days, I was able to fly up to 500 feet. And I knew that no seagull who ever lived had flown up to 500 feet because there's no food up there. And the theme for the seagull is eat. Fly low and eat. And let somebody feed you. And be dependent upon those boats and the crew who were throwing away the particles of fish. But I got to 500 feet, and as I came down, I was used to flying at about 10 miles an hour, and as I came down, what happened was I would pick up to a speed of 100 miles an hour. But as I got close to the water, my wings would get in the way again, and I'd go crashing into the water. And I just couldn't figure out, as I tried day after day, how to manage this thing. And so what I did is, I said, you know what, I'll go to 1,000 feet. And I flew up to 1,000 feet, and man, was it hard. And I got up to 1,000 feet, and I went down, and again at 50 feet, I crashed into the sea. There was something missing. So I tried to talk to my parents about it, and I remember what my mom said. Jonathan, why aren't you like the other seagulls? Why are you so different? You're going to starve to death. Look at you. You're feather and bone. What's wrong with you? And of course, Dad jumped in with his opinion. It was a little more stern. Jonathan, if you're going to spend your life doing something, learn how to figure out how to get more food. That's what seagulls do. That's what's important in life. That's our mission. More food, more food, more food. Stop this nonsense. I loved my parents. And so I tried to stop this nonsense. Oh, I stopped for a week. But then there was this calling inside that said more. I want to go higher. I want to go faster. I want to be bolder. I want to be more courageous. And so a week later, I was back out at sea. And I saw a hawk way up in the air. And the hawk, because he had shorter wings, could do the dive and then move over the water gently. And I said, I need shorter wings. But I'm not going to cut my wings off. And so what I learned to do was tuck my wings in. And then all of a sudden, I came down from 1,000 feet, and I was going 170 miles an hour. I'm sure I was setting a seagull record. 170 miles an hour. And as I kept my wings tucked in, I then gently let the points out. And all of a sudden, I glided across the water. And I didn't splash into the sea. I moved onto the sea gently. What grace! How beautiful I felt. And so I continued to practice. And one day I got to 5,000 feet. And as I came down, I was running 280 miles an hour. 280 miles an hour. And I thought, if I go through and come down to the flock, they'll see this and they'll be really impressed. And they'll want to fly too. And so I came down, and then at about 100 feet, I realized I was kind of a little out of control, not totally. And so I closed my eyes. Right through the flock I went. And I was very fortunate. I didn't kill anybody, and nobody killed me. And then I glided on to the water. And I thought, boy, will the flock be impressed. Later that day, there was the Council of the Gulls. And the Council of the Gulls, when they met together, did one of two things. They either honored somebody as a hero, or they cast them out. And I went in there with my wings up. I was feeling so good because I knew they were going to bless me. They were going to call me a hero, and others would want to fly like this. And then the council turned to me and said, Jonathan Living Seagull, you are banned. You do not act like a seagull. You don't think like a seagull, and you are out of here. And so I went into exile. Over near the cliffs, I could still see the seagulls. But as I continued to practice, a strange thing happened. Is that when the boats weren't fishing, because I was so high, I could go down in the water and I could actually get the tasty fish. So in some kind of strange way, I was doing what Dad said. Figure out how to get more food. And I got it. And I gained some of my weight back because I had worked so hard. And then one day as I started to move up, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 feet, next to me were two seagulls. They were radiant. They were white. They were beautiful. And they said, come on home, Jonathan. Come on home, Jonathan. And so he decided to let go, and as he moved up 30,000 feet, all of a sudden, he left the earth plane. He didn't know where he was. Those two seagulls said, don't worry, you're coming home. So he went home. And as he went home, he looked around, and there was Chang, the main instructor. And there must have been another 1,000 seagulls who could fly like he could. Some even he thought better. He said, there's so much more to learn. He says to Chang, is this heaven? And Chang said, oh no, this is not heaven. Heaven is when you know and experience perfection. And we all become one. Well, this feels like heaven. Not heaven. Sorry. You've got a lot of work to do. I've got a lot more work to do? Yes. And so Chang, if you would, took him under his wings. And he taught him to fly even faster, even better. He could land on the sand gently. And then one day, the word got around that Chang would be leaving. That Chang was moving to a higher consciousness. They didn't know what that meant, but Chang seemed to. And Chang said to Jonathan Living Seagull, I want to show you one other thing. And Jonathan Livingston Seagull said, I'm willing, I'm ready. And Chang flapped his wings one time, and he and Jonathan had moved from that place to another place on earth. All in an instant. And Jonathan said, how did you do that? And Chang said, one of the things I want you to remember is that you want to go somewhere, you got to know where you're going to go. If you want to fly like nobody else has flown, you've got to know and see how you're going to fly. And you can do this too. And so Chang transcended to another consciousness. Jonathan stayed there, or I stayed there. And in staying there, I started to teach others who were new to this, what I called a heavenly place, and teach them what Chang had taught me. And then one day, I was called to return to my original flock. I don't know how long it had been. And even in that place I call heaven now, there were some who said, you don't want to go back. They wouldn't listen to you right last time. All they're going to do is insult you. But I stayed in my heart. And I was able to go back, as Chang taught me. And when I came back, there was one fellow named Fletcher. And he was out at sea diving. And they had made him an outcast. And he opened himself up to Fletcher, knowing that they were truly one. And so, as I flew with Fletcher, the next day another seagull came, and then another, and then another. And during that year that I was there, 1,010 seagulls showed up to learn how to fly from their heart. I returned home, knowing that my mission was done, knowing that I loved to fly, that I was created like every gull to fly. But some stayed in the darkness and did not sense the light that I had the opportunity to sense. But more and more decided they wanted to fly. And it did my heart good to see them fly, to see them transform, to see them become all they could be, unlimited seagulls, each and every one. I am Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Fly with me. Fly with me. Fly with me. Thank you.